Right through here in email number 3. This comes from Catherine, right from here in New York City. And Catherine says, okay, a Nick Fury show is coming to Disney Plus. I could 100% get behind this. And if you're confused as to what Catherine is talking about, yeah, there is like Samuel Jackson has signed on to play Nick Fury in one more thing. As you know, I love Nick Fury. I love Sam Jackson. I just want to get more. And the fact that we're getting a Nick Fury show on Disney Plus, who knows what this is going to be like? I mean, we can sit here and speculate all day as to what the show is going to be, but I am pretty stoked about this. I think this is a really cool idea. I'm afraid that it's going to be a little too much like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but you know, Marvel Studios is pretty savvy. They kind of know what they're doing. I tend to think with Kevin Feige in the driver's seat, it's not going to be too much like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Todd, you've had a chance to check this out. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I'm excited to see it. I like the concept. They proved with Captain Marvel, their de-aging technology is on point. They can make Samuel L. Jackson look like he did in the 90s and pull it off believably. They've got a big chunk of time, what was it, 15, 18 years between Captain Marvel and 2008's Iron Man. So there's a big chunk of space there where he can go out on his own adventures. We can meet new characters. I would like to see more of an embrace from the MCU to the television series. I mean, early on in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., around the time of Thor: The Dark World, we did see Lady Sif cameo on the show, and they were doing fun things like that to tie it all together, and then they kind of abandoned that, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was left kind of hung out to dry. They totally blew up S.H.I.E.L.D. with Winter Soldier, so I think they were only 2 seasons in at that point, so they really had to backtrack and figure out, okay, where do we go from here? How do we reinvent the show? So I'd like to see more creative tie-ins to the MCU between the television shows and the movies. But a young 90s era Nick Fury, I'd be on board to watch that all day. I'd love to see the scene where Nick Fury watches Pulp Fiction.
That would back to back. He watches Phantom Menace, and then he watches Pulp Fiction back to back. I want to see that. But here's I have a few different questions. Earlier you mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. We have an opportunity here, depending on what era they set it in. We have an opportunity here for the return of an immense fan favorite in Phil Coulson, Agent Coulson. Do you think there's a possibility, kind of even regardless of what era they set this in, do you think there's a possibility they may bring back Coulson, or do you think he's just done?
I don't know. We may see. He was kind of off going on solo adventures a lot in the MCU. Like when he goes off to find Thor's hammer. I would say Maria Hill has always been more joined at the hip with Nick Fury. So I would imagine if they're going to set this in the 90s or early 2000s, we might see a younger version of the Maria Hill character, hopefully played by Colby Smulders and that wonderful bodysuit. That could be a lot of fun to kind of explore their dynamic, how they got to be thick as thieves the way that they are. Clark Gregg as Coulson, I mean, he really was the spark that lit the fire in the first Avengers movie. His death is what rallies the team. So there's no denying his importance in the MCU. So I could see both of those things happening. But my inclination at this point is we might see him in cameos. I don't know that he would be a regular performer alongside
So
Samuel
this brings
L.
up an interesting, I guess, kind of my next question really is, what era realistically do you think they're going to set this in? Do you think this is going to be kind of like a post-Captain Marvel show, or do you think it's going to be a little bit more contemporary? Or third option, do you think they're going to take the Black Widow approach and kind of do like in was it The Hobbit, when Gandalf runs away and does his gallivanting, and in the book The Hobbit we have no idea where Gandalf went, but when you read the extended appendices of Tolkien, you come to find out, oh, like he was in the Silmarillion, he went back to go do this and blah blah blah. And so when Peter Jackson went to write and produce the Hobbit films, they included all of that stuff. Where was Gandalf? What was he doing? Do you think there's a possibility for something like that, where okay, this is going to start at Age of Ultron, and maybe kind of see the adventures? Like, what was Nick Fury doing all that time when he went into hiding after Winter Soldier?
No, I agree with that idea. I think they're going to have to pick and choose. If you want to do fill in the blank adventures of where he was when he was off screen, that could be a lot of fun. What I don't want to see is a period piece that segues into that. I want them to do one or the other.
Do you think it's going to be the kind of show that ties in, not just, obviously everything ties in, but do you think it's going to be setting up the next thing? We're going to talk about this in a minute, in a few minutes, but WandaVision, we know WandaVision is going to be setting up Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Is there a possibility that the Nick Fury show is going to be setting up something else in the MCU? I mean, last we saw Nick Fury, he was on a spaceship flying around somewhere with the Skrulls.
Right. Yeah. So that's a story that needs to be told. When that big reveal happened, it begs the question: is the Nick Fury that we've seen in the MCU this entire time, has he been a Skrull the entire time, or did that transition take place at some point? I would love to see that. I personally would rather see a period piece, like in the 90s through the 2000s, leading up to his reveal at the end of Iron Man. One thing, a missed opportunity I felt like they had in Captain Marvel was to really just breathe in the time period that was the 90s. They said it in the 90s, but they don't really, aside from a couple of No Doubt music drops, they didn't explore what it was.
It could have been so much better, but that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We'll name drop Blockbuster. Moving on. I felt like they didn't do enough of that. It left me craving more. I feel there were a lot of missed opportunities there. So if they're going to do it as a 90s to 2000s period piece, I think that could be a lot more fun to explore. I'd lean more towards that than the fill in the gap series of where was Nick Fury when he wasn't on screen during the MCU.
Well, guys, the question is, what do you think they're going to do with the Nick Fury show? First of all, are you excited to see it? And B, what do you want to see from it? Do you want it to be in the past? Do you want it to be in the future? Do you want it to be kind of like in between all the other MCU films? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. And if you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what Weird Al Yankovic would want you to do. Dun, 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 dun.